Hey guys, so today we're going to go ahead and start with lesson 5.5, which is number patterns. On lesson 5.5, the number patterns are, in other words, the learning target is to create and describe number patterns. Now, when we look at number patterns, we're looking for a pattern within that number, or in other words, a rule that the number is following. So let's take a look at the first one. The first one is our rule says to shade every third square in the table. Now, the rule is what I have to do, but I need a starter. So in this case, my starter is starter 3. So starting with the number 3, I have to shade every third square. So the rule is to count 1, 2, 3. I shade the next square. Now, that also means that if I have 6 now, from 6, I need to count 3 more. So I'm going to keep going. 1, 2, 3. From 9, I'm going to go ahead and count 3 more. 1, 2, 3. From 12, I'm going to again add 3 more from that 12. 1, 2, 3. From 15, I'm going to add 3 more. 1, 2, 3. From 18, I'm going to add 3 more. 1, 2, 3. From 21, I'm going to count 3 more. 1, 2, 3. From 24, I'm counting 3 more. 1, 2, 3. So the rule goes that every number I land on, I add 3 more to it. So then I end up with 30. 3 more than 30 is 33. Then 36. Then I go to 39, 42, 45, 48, 51, 54, 3 more. So from 54 plus 3 more, 57, 58, 59, 60. Now, these are all the ones that I shaded. Now, the question is, what are the patterns that you see? Well, I do see that I start with 3, and then I jump to 6, 3 more, jump to 9. So the rule is, yes, the pattern is, yes, I am skip counting by 3. I'm adding 3 more. I'm not multiplying times 3. I am adding 3 more. These are also the multiples of 3 because, again, I started at 3. So that's a pattern that I also see. But if you look closely at the numbers, you have 3 is an odd number. 6 is an even number. 9 is an odd number, followed by 12, an even. So the numbers also go in odd, even, odd, even. Okay? Now you need to remember, when you are multiplying numbers as well, okay, an even number times an odd number, for example, 2, which is an even, times an odd, which is 1, will give you an even product, 2. If I multiply an odd number such as 3 times an odd number such as 1, that's 3 times 1, which that's going to give me 3. It's going to give me an odd product. And then an even number times an even number will always give me an even product. So also take into account, like I said before, that I'm adding 3 to every digit. Each digit is 3 more than the digit before it. That's one way of looking at it. And the other way that I explained was that you have an odd number, you have an odd, even, odd, even, odd, even, odd, even number pattern. Only because what did we start with? We started with an odd number. Okay? Now, that is the first step. Now, we're going to go ahead and try some more out. Here we go. Okay, so Let's take a look at our build understanding, in other words, creating number patterns. Here we go. Let me get this ready. All right. Okay. Now, a rule tells how numbers in a pattern are related. Now, if I look at the example, it says use the rule add 3 to create a number pattern. The first number in the pattern is 3. So I'm starting with a 3. Then describe another feature of the pattern. Well, same rules apply. If my rule is to add 3, starting with the number I circled, which is 3, right? Because that is my rule. That's what I'm starting with right here. I'm going to go from 3 plus 3 more. I get 6. Now 6 plus 3 more gives me 9. 9 plus 3 more is 12. 12 plus 3 more is 15. 15 plus 3 more is 18. Now, if you look at the numbers in the pattern, all of these numbers are multiples, meaning the products. Remember, multiples are the products of two factors. So all of these numbers, if you guessed it, I'm skip counting by 3. If I'm skip counting by 3, all the numbers that I'm saying out loud, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, and I can keep going. These are all the multiples of, you guessed it, these are all the multiples of 3. Now, let's take a look at the second example. All right, here we go. Now, the second example says, use the rule multiply by 2. So now we're not adding, now we are doubling. This is not the same as adding 2 more. So let me explain. First of all, the pattern starts with 10. Okay, so I have 10. But now to that 10, I'm multiplying it times 2. Now the biggest mistake that I have seen is that students will say 10, oh, 2 more? Oh, that's 30. Because it's 10, 20, 30. That's 30. That's not it. If I do it that way, I'm not really multiplying. I'm actually adding. So I need to double the 10. In other words, if I have 10 and I have another set of 10, I no longer have 10, I have 20. The rule of thumb is, of course, in this case, since I'm multiplying it times 2, I'm really going to look at this one right here. I'm going to look at the tens place. One, I put just the dot underneath. Because I'm going to think in my head, well, wait a minute. If I need to multiply that number times 2, that means that 2 times 2 is 4, because what's double of 2? Double of 2 is 4, but I'm going to keep the 0. So that means that 20 times 2 is 40. All right, now I start all over again. I go to 40. 40 now times 2 more. That means I look at the 4 and I think, well, I know that 4 times 2 is 8, and 8 is a double of 4. I'm going to keep that 0, so my number is 80. Now I'm going to keep going. I have 80. 80 times 2. Well, think about your basic fact. Your basic fact is 8 times 2. We know that 8 times 2 is 16. So now what do I do at the end? I don't leave it at 16. Remember, we're dealing with a hundreds number now. I have to add the 0 at the end. So now my number is 160. All right. Now you're stuck, because now you have to double 160 to get to the last answer. Well, you can do two of two things. You can either multiply 160 times 2 with the normal multiplication algorithm, or you can say, well, I know that I'm going to have to put a 0 at the end. So let me look at my basic fact. My basic fact is 16 times 2. Now keep in mind, I'm going to add a 0 to the end of that, okay? Because I'm really only working with the hundreds and the tens place now. So now I really have 6 times 2, which is 12. Carry the 1. 2 times 1 is 2. 2 plus 1 is 3. 32. So I'm going to put a 32, but let me put that ones place where it goes. So now my final answer is 320. Now, I'm going to take my highlighter. I want you to take a look at the ones digits. So let's look at the ones digit. I'm going to go ahead and choose a smaller highlight. Here we go. So this is my ones digit. This is my ones digit. This is my ones digit. That's my ones digit. This is my ones digit. And that's my ones digit. What do you notice that's the same with all the ones digits? Well, the ones digit of each number in the pattern, each one is a 0. So these are all multiples of 10. But the other thing you notice is look at the tens place. I started with 1, right? What's double of 1? 2. What's double of 2? 4. What's a double of 4? Meaning double means twice that number. Like that number 2 times. 8. What's 8 plus 8? 16. What's 16 doubled? 32. So each number is actually, each tens place is double the amount of the tens place before it. Okay? When you're multiplying or when you're adding, remember, you always look at the number that you're starting with to figure out what that number rule is or what that pattern is, and you look at the number next to it. These two numbers are going to give you an idea of, oh, wait a minute, what is the rule that I'm following? Because if I know that I have 10 and all of a sudden I jump to 20, well, 20 is double of 10. So that means I must be multiplying it times 2, because that would make sense. What number times 10 would give me 20? It would be 2. Therefore, if I get that, I know every other number in that pattern. It's very simple. Now, let's try out the next page. Let's try it out. Okay. So, again, write the first 6 numbers in the pattern. Describe another feature of that pattern. So let's take a look at question 1. Okay. Question 1 is to add 5. Now, this is very important because I've seen this mistake many, many times. Add 5. Okay, it doesn't start with 5. You need to see what number it is starting with. That's why I like to highlight my rule, and I like to know what is my starter. My starter is 1. So starting from 1, now I move to the next one. Now my rule starts to apply. What is 1 plus 5 more? 6. Now I move it again. 6 now plus 5 more. 11. 11 plus 5? Right, 16. Now, 16 plus 5 is 21. And 21 plus 5 more, you're right, is 26. And there you have it. Every number is adding 5. As soon as you get a number, the rule starts all over again. You don't start back at the first number. You always start with the the number you get. So let's take a look at question 2. Question 2 says, let's highlight, okay? Whoop, can't find my mouse. Okay, here we go. So let's highlight multiply by 3. What's my starter? My starter is 3. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and start my pattern. Starting with 3, I'm going to multiply 3 times 3. 3 times 3 is 9. 9 times 3, 27. Now, here's where it's going to start to get a little trickier. Here's where you're going to have to do a little bit of elbow grease, because the numbers are going to start getting bigger. So, if you know that you have a hard time with multiplication, then you're going to have to, work this one out. So I'm going to work this one out with you. If you start at 27, and I need to multiply that times 3, you're going to take 27 times 3. Just like that. You multiply the ones times the ones, 21, carry that 2. You're going to go back to the ones, which is the 3, times the tens. 3 times 2 is 6. Don't forget to add this 2 at the top. So it's 3 times 2 is 6. 6 plus 2 is 8. So I have an 81. So 27 times 3 more is 81. Now, I'm going to go back. 81. The other strategy you can use is, well, let's look at the 1. I know that 1 times 3 is 3. So my 1's place is going to be a 3. Now I have to figure out the other numbers, right? Because that's just the 1's place. I know that 8 times 3 is 24. I'm not going to have to regroup. So in that case, my product is 243. But let's say I'm not sure, right? Okay, then you're going to work it out. 81 times 3. See? The 1's place is 3 times 1. That's 3. Then you go to the 3 to the 10's place. 3 times 8 is 24. 243. We're almost there. Now, I have to again multiply 243 times 3. 1's times the 1's, 9. 1 times the 10's, 12. 2, but the 2 goes up top. 1's times the hundreds is 6, plus 1 is 7. So my final product is 729. Okay? Now, let's take a look at question 3. Let's take a look at my rule. What is my rule? My rule is take away 2. What am I starting with? I'm starting with 20. Okay? So here we go. I'm starting with 20. Subtract 2 now. Well, let's see. Count backwards 2 times. So that means 19, 18. Start at 18. Count back 2 times. 18 in my head. 17, 16. 16 in my head. 15, 14. 14 in my head, 13, 12. I can keep going if I wanted to. Now, this one does say the first 6 numbers, so I'm going to put one more. 12, take 2 away, leaves me with 10. Okay. Now, let's take a look at question 4, because I know that question 4 is going to be the most challenging one. The rule is to divide by 2, but I need to start with 256. Now, if you remember your divisibility rules, you remember that this number is an even number. It's going to be divisible by 2. That means that I can divide this by 2 and I will not get a remainder. So let's practice that long division. But before we start that, let's write our first number. 256. Okay. Now, I'm going to take the 256 and I need to divide that by 2. So, well, let's see. I'm going to take 256 inside, 2 on the outside. Now, I know that I've told you guys, I've also told this to many of my students. Some students have a harder time with the division. So don't forget your acronym. Remember, Don't Marry SpongeBob, right? Don't Marry SpongeBob is divide, multiply, subtract, bring down. Don't marry SpongeBob. So we're always going to start with the first number that in the hundreds place, in this case, the 2. How many times does 2 fit into 2? Once, right? So I'm putting a 1 right here. Now I just divided. I'm doing the M, multiply. 1 times 2 is 2. I put 2 here. Now I subtract. That's going to be a 0. So I'm just going to bring down that 5. There. Okay. Now, I need a number above the 5. I can't bring down the 6 yet because I just started divide. Every time I finish with the subtract step and I bring down, the division starts all over again. I cannot bring down twice. So now I have a 5. I'm going to divide again. How many times, if I had 5 things, how many groups of 2 can I make out of that? I could only make 2, right? Because 2 times 2 is 4. That's the closest number to 5. I'm going to subtract again. If I subtract 5 minus 4, I get 1. And after I subtract, I bring down 6. Well, that's it. I already know my answer because I already know that 16 divided by 2, right? Because division starts all over again. 16 divided by 2 is 8. So this is going to be an 8. And then 8 times 2 is 16. 16 minus 16 is 0. So in other words, I'm going to end up with 16 minus 16. That means that my remainder is going to be 0. So my next number is 128. Now, the other strategy that I like teaching too is to, now the number is a little easier to divide. I can actually split this number. I can split it like this. Let me look at the 12. 12 divided by 2 is what? 6. Now let me look at the 8. 8 divided by 2 is 4. So that means that my next digit is 64 because I just divided it. Okay. How can I check if I got it right? If I multiply 64 times 2, I get 128. Let's do the same strategy with the 64. If I start with this 6 right here, 6 divided by 2 is what? 3, right? Then I go to the 4. 4 divided by 2 is 2. Okay? And again, I can check my answer by multiplying 32 times 2, which will bring me back to 64. Now, I'm going to continue going. 32. All right. Well, think. It's going to be an even number, so I will not have a remainder. So let's work it out again. 2 on the outside, 32 on the inside, and here we go. How many times does 2 fit into 3? How many 2's can I get into a 3? I can only get 1. 1 times 2 is 2, minus this. 3 minus 2 is 1. Bring down that 2. 12. 12 divided by 2 is 6. 6. That means that 6 times 2 is 12. Minus that, I get no remainder. My next number is 16. All right, we have one more number to go. The next number is really easy. If I have 16, what number times 2 gives me 16? If I had 16, what number times 2 gives me 16? 8 times 2 gives me 16. So there is my final number pattern. Yes, some of these are going to require a little bit more elbow grease than the other ones, but you already know that in order to figure these out, you always look at your rule, you look at what you start by, and you just go right on through it. Okay? Some of these are a little bit more than others. Now, let's go to the next page. Let's take a look at the homework. Just a second. Okay. So let's take a look at our homework, right? This is in other words, your 5.5 practice. Your learning target is to create and describe number patterns. So let's look at the first example. Use the rule subtract 6 to create a number pattern. The first number in the pattern starts with 100. Now, if I look at the pattern and I start with 100, I have to apply the rule. 100 minus 6 leaves me at 94. 94 minus 6 more, I take away, leaves me with 88. If I have 88 and I remove 6, I have 82. 82 minus 6, 76. Minus 6, 70. And my pattern keeps going. Now, if you also look at the numbers in the pattern, 100, 94, 88, 82, 76, 70, all of these numbers are even. All of them are even. Okay? Now, let's say you were given a question that said, what is the number pattern? Because those are the type of questions you guys get on your tests. You're going to always look at these first two numbers and think in your head, well, if I started with 100 and I ended up with 94, my numbers are getting smaller. They must be subtracting. So I have to figure out, if I had 100 and I count back to get to 94, or in other words, minus 94, what does that give me? That's going to give me 6, a difference of 6 numbers. That's my rule. That means that every other number in the pattern is going to have that same rule. They're all going to be a difference of 6 from each other. Now, they're also going to be even numbers too, okay? In this case, not in every case. Now, let's look at the second example. Use the rule divide by 5 to create a number pattern. The first number in the pattern is 3,125. Well, that's a big number. So, if you look at 3,125 and you divide that number by 5, you're probably going to have to use long division to get more comfortable by just doing it in your head. That's going to lead you to 625. Okay, now, if I have 625 and I do my division by 5, that's leaving me with 125. 125 divided by 5 again leaves me with 25. I need to get 25 and divide it by 5. That leaves me with 5. Then I need to get 5 divided by 5 more. That leaves me with 1. The ones digit of each number in the pattern except the last number is 5. In other words, all the ones places. If you look at the ones places, they're all fives. So this is the ones place, that is the ones place, this is the ones place, this is the ones place, and this is a ones. And there's nothing here. So, well, that's a ones, but it's not a five. So yeah, the ones digit of each number in the pattern except the last number is going to be a 5. Now, just like I said, yes, you're going to have to divide. Okay? You are going to have to divide, especially when you have the bigger numbers. Here it says write the first 6 numbers in the pattern. Okay? Well, let's look at the rule. The rule is -8. I'm starting with 88. So let's work this one out. If I have 88 and I take away 8, I end up with 80. Right. If I have 80 and I take away 8 more, what does that give me? 72. Okay. If I have 72 and I minus 8, what does that give me? Right. 64. If I have 64 and I take 8 away, what does that give me? Right. 56. If I have 56 and I remove 8, what does that give me? Right. 48. Now, if you notice this pattern, these are all multiples of 8, right? So if I look over here, 88, well, let's see. I wonder what this is. Well, let's see. 8 times 11 is 88. 8 times 10 is 80. 8 times 9 is 72. 8 times 8 is 64. 8 times 7 is 56. And 8 times 6 is 48. These are all the multiples of 8, but they're just reversed. They're going from the largest multiple to the smallest multiple. Now, let's take a look at question 2. If I look at question 2, I have multiply by 10. But I have to start with my starter, which is 2. So let's try it out. 2 multiplied by 10 is what? In other words, 2 times 10. 20, right? 20 and 10 more. I add a 0, right? What about 200 times 10? So what would that be? Meaning I'm really adding a 10 more. So what would that answer be? I add another 0, right? 2, 1, 2, 3 zeros now, 2,000. So if I continue this pattern, right, all of my ones digits, in other words, all my numbers are going to increase by 10 because they are, in other words, we're multiplying it by 10. So we're pretty much adding an extra 0. Every number is going to have 10 more times than the number before it. Because if I said what number is 10 times more, or if I said 20 is 10 times more than what number? Than 2. 200 is 10 times more than 20. 2,000 is 10 times more than 200. And it keeps going. Because the next one would be 20,000 is 10 times more than 2,000. 200,000 is 10 times more than 20,000. And then the pattern keeps going. Now, if I took a look at let's look at question 4. Let's look at divide by 2. That's the rule, right? But I'm starting with 1,600, or in other words, 1,600. So I'm starting with 16. Notice I emphasize the 1,600. I don't really have to do a lot here, because if I look carefully, I could grab that 16. What's 16 divided by 2? 8. And then I add those 2 zeros. I'm going to keep going. Look at the 8. What is 8 divided by 2? 4, right? I'm going to keep those 2 zeros. I'm still in the hundreds. So what's 4 divided by 2? 2. Keep those 2 zeros. What's 2 divided by 2? 1. Keep those 2 zeros. Okay? And then I can just keep going, because I could say 100 divided by 2. What's half of 100? 50 is half of 100. So the last number would really be 50, because I actually could just look at the 10. 10 divided by 2 is 5. That means now I just have only 1 zero to add at the end. So my number pattern in this case was 1,600, 800, 400, 200, 100, and the last digit was 50. All right? So I hope you guys enjoyed today's lesson, and I will be uploading some new lessons coming up. So remember to always subscribe to the channel so that you can stay up to date with the current lessons that I am uploading. All right, guys. Bye.